difficulties.
Huh?
Technical difficulties.
Oh.
Yes, now it's on.
While we're experiencing technical difficulties, maybe Molly should serenade us.
That's a good idea. Let's see. Although we're about to start, I think.
Sorry. Yeah, that's what. Sorry about that. So it's Heather. I'm Lara. Braun.
You good?
Okay, we're good? All right.
Hope for the best.
Okay. Plan for the worst, hope for the best. Good morning, all. Slightly delayed. My name is Martha Childs, longtime member of this church and currently serving on the standing committee. We welcome you, those of you here in person on this beautiful sunny day, and those of you at home. A reminder for those of you who are visiting us virtually, it's important, we need to know that you are with us. So we're asking that you sign in to menti.com. Here is the number to use. And this is so you can participate in the service and also in the Candles of Caring, which will come later. Okay? A few reminders from Community Matters, things upcoming. At the end of the week, we're planning a Yule Winter Solstice service. Details in the Community Matters. There's information from Racial Justice and Important Today. And next Sunday, there will be the Women's Alliance Home Church Holiday Bazaar with jams, jellies, and other crafts. Please be sure to check out all the information in your community matters. And enjoy the service.
I have wrapped the wide world in my wider self, and time and space my spirit seeing are. I am the god and demon, ghost and elf. I am the wind's speed and the blazing star. All nature is the nursling of my care. I am its struggle and the eternal rest. The world's joy thrilling runs through me. I bear the sorrow of millions in my lonely breast. I have learned a close identity with all, yet am by nothing bound that I become. Carrying in me the universe's call, I mount to my imperishable home. I pass beyond time and life on measureless wings, yet still am one with born and unborn things. The words of Sri Aurobindo. Let us worship. I'd like to invite our worship associate to light our chalice. And as Larry lights our chalice, please join me in saying the words of our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. This is the third Sunday of Advent. Last week, for the second Sunday, we lit the peace candle. Before that, for the first Sunday of Advent, the hope candle. This week, we add the third candle, the candle of joy, which is the pink or rose candle. The three other candles are purple, which is the liturgical color of mourning or sacrifice and preparation in traditional Christianity, but pink or rose is the liturgical color of joy. So hear these words as the wreath is lighted by Rich, of Jan Richardson. You can prepare, but still it will come to you by surprise, crossing through your doorway, calling your name and greeting, turning like a child who quickens suddenly within you. It will astonish you how wide your heart will open and welcome for the joy that finds you, so ready and still so unprepared. Thank you. Good morning. I join with Martha in welcoming you to First Church Unitarian here in Littleton, Massachusetts, and welcome to people joining us virtually as well. My name is Lara Hoke, and I'm so happy and lucky to be the minister serving this incredible congregation. If you are with us for the first time today, whether in person or online, virtually, we're so glad that you found us. If you want to leave a record of your presence, or if you wish to be contacted by us after the service, if you're in person, you can fill out one of the lavender cards in the pew rack ahead of you and put that into the offering plate when it comes around. If you are online with us for the first time, if you wish, please go to our website, fculittle.org, and scroll down and you'll see the virtual pew card, and you can fill that out and we can contact you as well. But we're happy that you are with us either way, and happy that everyone came back who came back. Today we have, as you have already heard, some very special guest musician is with us today, Heather Braun Bakken, and I'm already loving it, so thank you so much for being here, and Molly for having your friend come. This is great. Our lay pastoral minister today is Patty Sardella. So welcome on this day. It is so good to be together. All right, did anyone sign in yet from our Menti remote participant greeting?
Yes, we have Andy Leonor, Neela Miller, Charlie and Sarah Weeks, Peggy, Lori Lucasio, Christine, Lynn Courtney and Tom Bentley, Eleanor Gentleman, Ann Donald, Jen, Wayne and Enzo, Araya and Lorinda, Cindy H., Diva and Diggory, Natalie Hoke, Chet Olson, Pedro, Jen and Fergus, Pam and Joel, Kate Hutchins, Debbie Eston, Rochelle Chambless, Jim and Karen Barisano.
All right. Well, thank you, and welcome to our remote participants again. And thank you for those of you who signed in. It's so wonderful to hear your names so familiar and to then imagine you. And welcome to all of you, signed in or not. Okay, so normally in this point in the service, we would be singing our opening hymn. But as you know, in yellow light conditions, we can't sing in person yet. So we have some joyful noise. And it's really joyful because Heather and Molly will play, and we will accompany them to the best of our ability through whatever percussion instrument wound up near you. Wonderful, thank you. Thank you so much for letting us enhance that as well. Oh, okay, thank you. This is time for sharing our generosity. As you know, First Church Unitarian is a self-supporting congregation, and we rely on the generosity of our members and friends for the ministries that we do, both here between these walls and out beyond them as well. The offering for the good works of this church will now be given and received in grateful appreciation. Please join with me in the words of our response. We are grateful for the opportunity to give and serve, and grateful for the gifts we have received. May this affirm the ministries of our church community, both within and beyond these walls. Thank you so much. That was beautiful, really beautiful. Most weeks, this congregation shares a time to feel again our connections to one another and to that which we consider holy. And it's in this spirit that we share in the candles of caring. If you have a special joy or concern that you would like to share with this gathered, beloved community, you may do so. If you are here in person, please raise your hand high enough that we can see it, and we'll bring the microphone to you where you are. And if you are with us virtually, again, you would go to menti, menti.com, and enter this number 6772-2124, and there you could share a joy or a concern. Are there any candles to share this morning?
Hi, I'm Peter Sina. First of all, I just found these colorful glasses on the floor near me. I have no idea who they belong to, but if they're yours, come collect them. I have a candle of excitement. On Friday, Len and I are leaving for Mexico City to spend the holiday with our son who lives down there. We'll be back shortly before the new year, and very much looking forward to it.
Great. Wonderful.
Hi, my name is Anna Fadden. This is a candle of concern for the people down in Kentucky that were really hard hit with the hurricane, and everybody dealing with the effects of climate change, and giving us the political will to do something, take action.
Thank you, Anna.
David Butts, just thinking of Brother Hugh today as they pay final respects to his mother, and he deals with a lot of responsibility around that.
Yes, thank you, David.
A candle of joy because they just opened up a ballroom dance studio not more than a mile from my house in Acton. And we're going to become members, and I know that's going to make my wife much happier just in general. And just one minor regret, and that is that I didn't quite have the courage to start dancing to that wonderful music that we heard. So if we ever get in that space again, just make contact with me, and we will enjoy ourselves with dance here.
Any other joys or concerns here in the sanctuary to share?
Hi, I'm Patty, and I just found out that David, my son, has decided not to come for Christmas.
Oh, close.
David's not coming for Christmas,
Oh.
and it's very hard. It's the first time we haven't been together for Christmas, with the exception of the COVID Christmas. But I'm making some improvement in that I can take a breath. I can say, he's 35 years old. This is his choice. Okay. So that's a big step for me in my direction. So, so thank you.
Bill Dustin. This is a candle of huge joy. Joy for being alive and for having two wonderful granddaughters in California who we see on Zoom. And someday we hope to fly out there and see them in person.
Wonderful. Right. I don't see any others in the sanctuary. Do we have any shared from our virtual participants?
Yes. From Peggy, Carl and I both came down with COVID while Emma recovered. Carl is having worse symptoms. His breathing is okay, but he has constant headache and body aches. Please send healing thoughts his way and pray that our son is spared. My New York cousin Lisa is in the hospital with COVID. She was fully vaccinated, and this breakthrough infection is hitting her hard. Another one. Please light a candle for a friend who needs good thoughts and prayers. For Catherine Flatstraff and her family as they continue to face the challenge of her brother's health struggle. Send prayers and healing wishes. Neela. And we have another from Neela. What a joy it is to create with my Arts Play Shop pals once a month. All are welcome. Neela. Ask prayers and healing for dear friend Joy at UU Key West, diagnosed with breast cancer last week. This one from Ann Donald. My twin sister, Nan Donald, had a questionable diagnosis mammogram, but has to wait until the end of January for the biopsy. Healing thoughts and prayers truly appreciated.
Thank you. And I'd like to ask Rich to light one last candle and let this represent all the joys and concerns that are with us this morning, but that remain unspoken. Please join with me in the spirit of meditation or prayer. Once again, we have come together in love and trust, sharing those cares dearest to us with this gathered, beloved community. Let us hold in our thoughts, perhaps our prayers, those joys and concerns that were spoken aloud this morning, as well as those that remain unspoken, as we share together in a time of sacred silence. Amen, and blessed be. Little kids are often profound. Perhaps it's because they're thinking and asking questions without many preconceived notions like we older people might have. Maybe it's because they're thinking and asking questions without worrying as much about sounding foolish. I don't know. But I remember having this profound thought or question as a little kid, not because I was so special, because as I have read and seen in interviews, lots of other little kids had this same thought. Namely, I remember lying on the sofa when I was about 4 years old, and my mother was still a homemaker, and she was vacuuming the entire house, upstairs and downstairs, as she used to do every single day. So this was my thinking time. And I remember lying there, and I knew that my parents and my siblings had been there before I was born. But then I thought, where was I before I was born? And I had heard about a distant relative of ours dying recently and knew a little bit about death, and I wondered, where did they go after they died? And more importantly, where would I go after I died? And I hadn't been raised to believe in any sort of afterlife, so I had no preconceived ideas about that. Some think that little kids are so profound because, in a way, they just came from the great beyond. They were just born into human form out of the cosmos, and they're perhaps in some sense still more in touch with it. The great oneness, the ultimate reality, call it what you will. And so perhaps, especially before they start to see themselves as separate from everything else, which is much younger than 4, they're almost a window into that greater reality that some might even call God or Goddess. They're perhaps a window into what some have called the Christ consciousness, or the Krishna consciousness, or the cosmic consciousness. We have thought a little bit in recent times, just a little bit, about different ideas of consciousness. We've briefly considered Julian Jaynes and bicameralism. We recently considered David Chalmers and his zombie thought experiments, and the idea that consciousness might be something beyond the physical world. And we briefly considered Robert Lanza's biocentric universe. Today, as part 3 of what I'm thinking of as the consciousness series, I want to think about this grander scale, and today consider very briefly the idea that perhaps the entire universe is conscious in some sense. When we've considered consciousness together here before, we were talking really about human consciousness, about that peculiar inner dialogue that we have, that running dialogue, that propensity to have subjective experiences going on internally, a rich inner life that no one else can quite know. In today's consideration of a conscious universe, the bar is probably a little lower. No one has yet proposed that the universe has wandering thoughts and a monkey mind, but we're talking about consciousness as generally some version of self-awareness and thought. Some of you might be sitting there a little worried or cringing even, because it seems like I might be going to a pretty new agey, quantum claptrappy, hippy-dippy kind of place. But some scientists out there are actually proposing a conscious universe. And actually, some of our religious forebears hinted at it too. I'll try to keep it as real as I can with those thinkers as my guides. But clearly, this is uncharted territory in many ways. One thinker who believes in a conscious universe is Gregory Matloff, a physicist at New York City College of Technology. Several years ago, Matloff published a paper essentially arguing that humans might be like the universe in both substance and spirit. As Corey Powell writes in a NBC News article, Matloff is arguing that a, quote, proto-consciousness field could extend through all of space. Stars may be thinking entities that deliberately control their paths. Put more bluntly, the entire cosmos may be self-aware, end quote. The academic term for this is panpsychism. You've heard of pantheism, meaning pan, all, theism, God, so God is in everything. Panpsychism is just the idea that consciousness or the mind is in everything. This theory has some other heavy-hitting academics in its corner: neuroscientists, cognitive scientists, physicists, and more. It has heavy-hitting detractors as well, of course, and it's admittedly in a speculative phase. But Matloff and others want to put it to the scientific test at least. Either verify it or falsify it, prove it or disprove it. Powell's article also notes the panpsychic ideas of physicist Bernard Hayes. In 2006, Hayes proposed that quantum fields that permeate all of empty space, the so-called quantum vacuum, produce and transmit consciousness. So Hayes proposed that any complex system which has energy flowing through it could then be conscious. Quote, not just a brain, but potentially any physical structure. Matloff even believes that panpsychism might provide an explanation for the hitherto inexplicable mystery of dark matter, which physicists tell us makes up 95% of the matter in our universe, but which otherwise we know nothing about. So yes, panpsychism does take us to some seemingly perhaps hard to believe or absurd places, but so does traditional materialist versions of science at times. And materialistic conventional science has so far offered no strong theories, really, on consciousness. So absurdities and unknowns abound. Whatever various theories of consciousness get right or get wrong, I believe we can gain something in considering them. As a religious body, one thing I definitely hope is that we will consider them what they might offer or indicate for us spiritually or theologically. With panpsychism, though many things about the concepts seem pretty out there, it actually jibes pretty well with a lot of historic Unitarian Universalist spirituality and theology. Notably, it aligns pretty nicely with the transcendentalists of the mid-19th century. Ralph Waldo Emerson eloquently wrote on this. Emerson wrote extensively about the oversoul, his term for the great oneness of all. To give a sense of Emerson's idea of the oversoul, he wrote, "We live in succession, in division, in parts, in particles. Meantime, within man is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty, to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one. And this deep power in which we exist, and whose beatitude is all accessible to us, is not only self-sufficing and perfect in every hour, but the act of seeing and the thing seen, the seer and the spectacle, the subject and the object are one. We see the world piece by piece as the sun, the moon, the animal, the tree, but the whole of which these are shining parts is the soul." Emerson wrote so much about this in his essay, The Oversoul, which I certainly commend to you. One more thing I'll share. He wrote, "The worst feature of double consciousness is that we have two lives, one of the understanding and of the soul, which we lead really show very little relation to each other, never meet and measure each other. One prevails now, all buzz and din, and the other prevails then, all infinitude and paradise. And with the progress of life, the two discover no greater disposition to reconcile themselves. So he thought that although we had these monkey minds, we had this deeper consciousness that could connect with all, with the oneness. As you can see, the Transcendentalists did think deeply about a universal consciousness, a kind of cosmic mind or consciousness, in their own terms. But to be fair, they had a great deal of help in coming up with this, because the Transcendentalists in the mid-1800s were among the earlier people in the Western world to get their hands on English translations of writings from Hinduism and Buddhism. Interestingly to me, the Transcendentalists were very sloppy, really, in differentiating between what came from Hinduism and specifically Vedanta, which we've talked about here, versus what came from Buddhism. But perhaps they mixed them all up because they were particularly taken with the areas of major crossover, including perhaps especially this concept of a great oneness of all, rather than a more traditional Judeo-Christian version of God or divinity. And that has had a deep, a profound influence on Unitarian Universalism to this day. One of the central concepts, perhaps the central concept of Vedanta, is the idea that the Atman, the inner light within you, that deeper consciousness, is almost like a watcher watching your thoughts. That Atman within you is ultimately one and the same with Brahman, the great oneness of all. And Emerson borrowed from this so heavily that I'd actually really like to commend to you, even more than the Oversoul, a good translation of some things out of the Vedantas, the Upanishads in particular. So the spiritual or theological concept of a cosmic consciousness, I suppose in some ways it does take us to a new agey place, but really it dates back to this ancient idea of Brahman that's found in the oldest scriptures we have yet found on this planet, in the Hindu Vedanta. Sometimes New Age thought really isn't that new. It often borrows from Eastern religion in a way that Western seekers have been doing since at least the Transcendentalists in the 1800s. I've often marveled at the intuition of the ancient thinkers who wrote down the Vedantas, and later the Hindu thinkers who also wrote the Bhagavad Gita and more. They correctly intuited that the age of the universe goes back unfathomable eons, versus the Western religious intuition that it dates back merely some thousands of years. They correctly intuited that the cosmos is unfathomably vast beyond what we can see with our eyes. They correctly intuited that the cosmos makes a hum. And science later showed that indeed this is true, and that it sounds a little bit even like Om. On and on. Were they correct in their intuition that there is a great oneness, even, to use the modern term, a cosmic consciousness? While I have to acknowledge that the science is definitely not there yet in any convincing way, I never bet against the intuition of the writers of Vedanta. So, where were you before you were born? Where will you go after you die? Science tells us pretty clearly what happens to your body, including your brain, which seems to be the machine driving your consciousness and much of what makes you, you. But that's the physical machine of you. What happens to your actual consciousness beyond the physical brain? Does it have a life that carries on without your body? Is consciousness that thing that sometimes people call the soul? Science and the conservation of mass tell us that your physical self never completely goes away. Mass is conserved, it merely changes form. Namely, you become dust, ashes to ashes. What happens to consciousness? Does it also never completely go away, but just change form? Maybe, just maybe, the Vedantists were onto something, and your Atman, your inner light or consciousness, really is one and the same with Brahman, the oneness of all. And if so, maybe, just maybe, when your body changes back to dust, your inner self continues to be in the Brahman, where it ever was, where it is now, and where it will be after you die. Maybe where it was before you were born. And maybe, just maybe, that is heavenly bliss. I obviously don't know whether this is accurate or true, but I do know that for me, it makes more sense than most traditional concepts of an afterlife that I have heard. May we continue to be open to what science teaches us and to the questions it poses, even when it challenges our worldview or even necessitates a change in our worldview. May we continue to respect the intuitive scientific questioning that has brought us some of our greatest insights into the universe and its mysterious nature. May we continue to ask the big questions and to question the big answers. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. Thank you, Heather and Molly and choir, for that. It's beautiful. I invite you to rise in body or spirit for our closing words. And if you wish to, put your hands out and feel that energy between us, and including those who are with us online. And in the cosmos, yes. And I think for our closing words, if you will, please join with me. We will make together our own cosmic hum. I invite you to say Om, hold it out as long as you can, but comfortably, maybe 5 times in a row. Blessed be, and amen. Thank you so much for that beautiful music today. And I realized I cheated a little bit with that ohm because it was a little bit like singing. Apologies. But if you enjoyed that moment of sort of singing together, please join us on the Littleton Common at 2 p.m. for some caroling with the Greater Littleton Interfaith Council. It should be a lot of fun. Keep your mask on. We'll be outside. Should be good. See you then, and see you on Zoom at noon if you like.
Good.